Hi everybody, this is Christian from LaserDevs Academy. I just wanted to pop in with a short video about the future of Picotron and the future of Pico 8. So the newest version of Picotron just came out. It's this one here. It's 0.3.0C. And there are some changes. We're going to walk through them in a second, but also a new document has been just released. And this is the document in question. It outlines Zep's, Pico 8 and Picotron's creator, plans for a so-called Lexaloffle Online pass, LXO in short. Now this sounds fancy, but it's not actually that mind-blowing. We've already seen it in action on the last video. When you have an account on the Lexaloffle forums, some accounts are flagged as having the LXO, the Lexaloffle Online pass, and those accounts can then post high scores and also have access to the podnet features that we saw in the previous video. Now this puts a name on a strange phenomenon that we encountered in the last video where I created a new account on the Lexaloffle forums and I wasn't able to use this to post high scores in Picotron. This is because that new account didn't have a Picotron purchase associated with it. So the way this works is whenever you buy any kind of software from Lexaloffle, be it Picotron, Pico 8 or Voxatron, your account receives the LXO, the Lexaloffle Online Pass, and then can be used to post high scores using these pieces of software. Which also explains the discrepancy where some people who didn't own Picotron were still able to log into Picotron. They just bought Pico 8 previously. Good to know and good to have kind of like a name, like a term associated with that. Okay, so this exists now. Now, as we scroll through this document, there is an FAQ here. There's some interesting tidbits, some things we already know about. For example, that you can submit a new high score roughly around 2 seconds. It's limited to roughly around 2 seconds. You cannot submit it any faster. And I like how Zep posted here a list of things that this could be used for. He mentions stuff like score challenges, slow-paced games, daily challenges, door games, board games, golf, pixel art battles, when you maybe draw some pixel art and then you rate each other's pixel art, user-made levels, replays, and room states. So I'm thinking maybe stuff like MUDs. This is just a summary of stuff we were already familiar with, but it's good to have it spelled out in black and white. Now, very important here, something I already mentioned before, you don't need the LXO to use Picotron. If you received a version of Picotron through any other means, you don't have to log in using your account. This is just for high scores. There's no like license permission associated with that. Now we have a bunch of clarifications and a bit of a walkthrough here explaining how things work. Now this is where things get interesting. In the future, fantasy console owners will also receive some bonus LXO passes that can be sent to friends so that they can play via the BBS website or exported cartridges without owning a console. And this feature will arrive around the same time as Pico 8 0.3 along with Pico 8 score sub support. So yeah, so the idea is that if you have friends and you want them to join Pico 8 to play maybe your Pico 8 games and you want to chase each other high scores, you can give them an LXO pass, so to speak, like these tickets, so to speak. And then they can create a Lexaloffle account, and without buying Pico 8, they can submit their high scores. This is a fascinating system. Good to know that this is where things are going. Not exactly what I had in mind, but it's good to have some clarity of how things will proceed in the future. Also, casual name drop of Pico 8 0.3. Now, here is also something that we already heard about, but also it's good to have it on black and white. So soon we also will have family accounts, so you can have multiple users per account, so you can log into Pico 8 as multiple players, all using the same account, so you don't have to create a separate account from members from your family. This is absolutely useful in the family setting, but also I'm thinking this from a developer's perspective. It's nice to be able to just log into different accounts and test out your high score features. Now, here's another question that I had at the end of my last episode. How will this work with exported cartridges, with cartridges that were exported as an executable file and maybe uploaded to itch or to Steam? Cartridge authors will be able to use ScoreSub and Podnet from exports in the future, but players will still need to log in with an LXO account. Any authors interested in bundling LXO keys with their commercial games, feel free to get in touch. So this is very interesting. So this means that if I create a Pico 8 game and I upload it to Steam and I want to include high score capabilities, I can do that, but the people on Steam will have to log in with their own Lexaloffle account that has LXO associated with it. Now, most of the people out there probably won't have that. Just a regular Joe Schmo probably doesn't have necessarily Pico 8. But I can then also request bundles of LXO keys from Zep, and then I can maybe bundle those keys together with my game so people can create their own Lexaloffle accounts and can post their high scores. Now, for me, this clarifies a lot of questions. Suddenly, a lot of things make a lot more sense. However, it is a bit of a complicated process. I just want to post a high score, but it requires me to create the account and then put like a code in there. There's just a lot of steps involved into just posting a high score. The reasoning for this is explained here a little bit. It's just like very difficult to open the system up to a wider audience. There's lots of potential for misuse and obviously like server load issues that we need to deal with. So that's why it feels like Zep wants to keep a lid on the system a little bit to make sure that this doesn't get out of hand. And then finally, we have a whole paragraph, 2 paragraphs about Pico 8, the next Pico 8 version. 0.3 will be the next one apparently. And also, it seems like ScoreSub will be available for Voxatron as well. Now, sadly, there is no ETAs yet. It seems like this is something that Zep doesn't even want to put like a date on. He's still probably ironing out all the issues that come up with the current implementation of ScoreSub. But there's still some interesting juicy details that jumped out at me here. Players can log in via the pause menu using a web passcode. So that's interesting. That gives us an idea of how the implementation will work in Pico 8. Just to remind yourself, this is how it works in Picotron. You have like the login stuff in here. And when you add an account, it gives you like this code. And then you have to take this code and type it into a website where you logged into Lexaloffle, and that will link your copy of Picotron to your account on Lexaloffle. Well, it seems like the same system will going to be applied to Pico 8, and that's smart. That now it actually makes sense to me, because when you're playing, for example, Pico 8 on a handheld, you don't really have a keyboard. So what you do then is you bring up the pause menu, which means this menu here, bring up this menu, and probably is going to be a 5th option here that allows you to log into Lexaloffle Online, and that will also bring up a code, just a code. And then you probably have to take like your cell phone or like your PC, bring up a website where you can type in that code, and that will link your copy of Pico 8 to your account. A bit of an unusual process, but I see the logic here. And finally, one little interesting tidbit. I was wondering, kind of how do the icons work in Pico 8? You know how users have like these icons associated with their account. How would that work in Pico 8? It looks like that will be solved probably, it's not clear entirely, but that will be probably solved with a PASCII solution. So that's going to be encoded into a string, so to speak. Honestly, I'm not really sure if that's even possible with the current state of Pico ASCII. I know you can create custom characters, but I haven't seen like multiple colors being used for that. We're gonna see how this will play out. But yes, this is all the information about Lexaloffle Online, about the plans for Lexaloffle Online. We're gonna have those passes, we're gonna have family accounts, and also Pico 8 0.3 is coming up with its own login, and it will work through the pause menu. Now, finally, let's move on to the features of the new version of Picotron 0.3.c. As you can see, one of the features is that now, when you launch a Picotron card on the BBS, on the Lexaloffle forums, it will also log you in automatically if you are logged in the Lexaloffle forums and you have an LXO account associated. So I am currently logged in here as Chrisman, and I can post my high scores in here. And this is also the newest version of Boink, the incredible high score testing tool. It has some new features, so you can see there is like 3 different high score lists now. There's an all-time, there's a daily list, and there's a local list here, and you can switch to different high score lists. And ooh, that's interesting. How does that work? Let's look under the hood and see how it was made. So let us pull up Boink, let us pull it onto the desktop, and then let us load the cartridge to see what's inside. Now, off the bat, I have to do a bit of an errata from last time around. Last time, I said that there's going to be a new set of high score lists for every version of the game that you upload to the Lexaloffle forums. This is false. I misread the document. There are separate high score lists for your local versions, for the version of the program that is run locally, and from the one that is run from the BBS, from the Lexaloffle forums. But if you upload a new version, that version just inherits the high score list and not get wiped. If you want to wipe them, you have to do it yourself. You have to change the code so it starts posting to a fresh high score list, something like high score list 2, So again, we have three high score lists: an all-time high score list, a daily high score list, and a local high score list. Here's what it looks like in the code. So we have a function here called getTableName, and that function just kind of like manages the different names of high score lists that the data is being pulled from. So in an all-time high score list, that high score list is just called Boink, and that's your default high score list like before. Now when you click on a daily high score list, it will pull from a different high score list, and this is where it gets interesting. So what the function does here, it generates a high score list based on the current date. So it basically takes the text Boink underscore and then it adds the text of the current date to the name of the high score table. This means that when, the date changes to the next day, it will start submitting to just a differently named high score list. And presumably all the people in the world will do the same, so they will all start posting to this fresh new high score list, making it the daily high score list. Now, if you let this run for a while, this program will generate a new high score list for every day in the year and then, subsequent years as well. So it's going to be a whole bunch of high score lists living on the server, but apparently the system was made with this in mind, because otherwise Zep wouldn't have posted something like this. That's something I had in my mind as well, and it's good to see that the system is here to support that kind of high score list spam, so to speak. However, this is the point where I have to issue a bit of a warning. This function, this date function, that is based on the current system date set on your machine. This is a highly, highly unreliable source of information for the current date, and it is very easy to manipulate that date. So with no effort at all on a live stream, I was able to just post to just dates that were set before this program was released or dates in the future. I could just post my high score list to whatever date I wanted just by setting the date of my system to a different date. Now in this case, it's not the end of the world. I don't think Zep really cares about people manipulating the daily high score list for Boink. It's a fairly low stakes kind of situation right now. However, that's something to keep in mind in the future if you want to use a similar technique for something that is more important, something that shouldn't be exploited this way. You can't rely on date as a way to source this information. You have to find some other solution. And I don't know what that solution would be. Possibly you could do something like maybe post like the current date on your own podnet, and then the software would grab that from podnet. That would be maybe possible. Either way, it's a very simple way to create daily high score lists. And actually a long time ago, I made a similar video of how you can do like daily challenges in Pico 8, and that uses a very similar technique. You just take the current date and you change it into a string or into a number and use that as a starting point for an RNG, or in this case for a high score list. Okay, that gives us all time and daily. Now, how do the local high score lists work? This one tripped me up a little bit because I thought we maybe had some way to access the different versions of the high score list, the local ones and the BBS ones somehow. That's not the case. It's just a very simple situation where the high score list is being stored as a pod object and written to just, Picotron's file system under app data boink.pod. They just write it into a file. It's not even using score sub in this case. So it would be here in Picotron app data. It would be here, but strangely it's not here, and that's something that kind of tripped me up. But in this case, it's here. It's contained in this BBS folder. All of the cards on the BBS cannot actually write into the app data folder directly. Instead, they are put into this like sandbox BBS folder. And there is your Boink folder where it writes stuff into your app data. So yeah, if you double click on this, you see that, this is the high score list. It's just one entry. It's just my number and my high score. And so this is how you get all-time, daily, and local high score lists. Now, there's another new thing that was introduced that I really, really like, and that allows me to go back into our example card that we had on the last video, where some things were not quite clear. I can clarify these now. Let me show you. All right, so I have my little example card. When I click this button, I will submit a high score to a high score list. But now I do it actually every frame, and every frame I will print out what happens. Because you remember maybe on the last video when I submitted high score list, it didn't show up immediately. It showed up after I pressed the button the second time around. And this is because when you submit a high score list, it doesn't, the program doesn't wait until the server responds. It just continues running stuff. And it might take a couple of frames for the high score list to actually arrive from the server. And until now, this wasn't really well managed. You just received an empty high score list, and it seemed like maybe there was nothing on the high score list, but then suddenly, information pops in. Now there is a new property, and I'm using it here. So if the program is waiting for the high score table to arrive from the server, it will return an empty table with the property connecting set to true. So you know that you have an empty table, but that doesn't mean that there's no high scores. It just means that we're still waiting for the table to load. You just have to request the high score list over and over again until information pops in. Now, I'm doing this a little bit aggressively right now. Maybe I'm just going a little overboard. Maybe you have to tweak this in a second here, but let me show you how this works. So let me click on this. 3, 2, 1, go. So yeah, it's a little bit, it's a bit of different results than last time around. So you see that on the first frame, I click on the button, and then for the next like 30 frames, I was just connecting. There was just no high score list. Now, eventually a high score list popped up, but past the 36th frame, it took more than 30 frames for this to pop up. Let me tweak the code a little bit. So I'm requesting it only every, let's say, 2 frames. Something like if log count modulo 2 equals 0, then. And then submitting the score now. Wow, it takes more than 70 frames. That's crazy. That wasn't the case last time around. So let's submit, let's write a new log every 4 frames. Let's try this. There we go. So you see after 44 frames, after almost an entire second, then I received a high score list. This is my high score list, is just one single entry. So you see it can take a bunch of seconds for the data to show up. Until you do, you can use this connecting feature from the table that you received in the meantime to see if you're still waiting for the data to arrive. And something that caught me off guard here is that, it took 44 frames now. Last time I did this check, it connected in 10 frames. So this might vary depending on the state of the network right now or where you are in the world. Just something to keep in mind. Oh, by the way, also a very important thing to keep in mind. I didn't have it on my radar, but it came up recently, and it's kind of like important to remember this. You don't have access to the high score lists if you are not logged in. This is important to the thing we talked about earlier. If you don't have an LXO account, then you will never even see the high score list. They won't even show up. That's a little bit strange, to be honest. We're going to see if this remains, but for now, this is how it works. And then finally, I wanted to actually address something that came up on my last stream that I did that is actually quite interesting and quite something that you have to keep in mind when using Picotron now. It is kind of wild and unusual that now we have these online features, because this also means that, you're no longer playing on your own, you're playing with other people now, and other people can pop into your game and start messing around with stuff. So for example, if you create a chat room, right, and you chat a little bit with your friends and you upload it to Lexaloffle, then other people will start joining your chat room, and that's a new situation. We didn't have that in Pico 8 and Picotron before. That's kind of like, your internet experience with all of the negatives and positives that are associated with it. And this might be important if you care about privacy. And this is also important when, for example, you have kids. And the kids can use those chat rooms. And there's just no moderators in those chat rooms. Now, don't worry, it's not like there was an incident or anything. It's a small and cozy community, so I don't think we need to do a lot of policing or anything like this. But it can be something that you just don't have in your head, you don't have in your mind. I had this happening recently when I popped into a chat room and I was on a live stream, and people got very nervous that suddenly they're exposed to a huge audience. Understandably so. I'm going to be more careful in the future, and you should be also more careful in the future about how you're going to utilize those functions and how you're going to use cards that have these functions built in. And I also want to reiterate something that we had earlier in this video. There's lots of more potential for crazy exploits, and those exploits have more consequences now than they had before. If I hacked my own local high score list on my own instance of Pico 8, that didn't matter. But now people can hack a high score list that is exposed to everybody, or you can write a dirty word in there. And again, not something that actually happened, but something that we have to be mindful of. We need to be cognizant of ways to exploit those systems and maybe anticipate certain ways in which those systems can be abused, just to create a safer and more pleasant environment for everybody. I will keep an eye out for potential exploits, and I will let you know when I have more. And at this point, the only thing left for me to do is to give a huge shout out to all of the people who are supporting this channel. If you also want to support my work, you can do this now on 3 different platforms. You can support it on coffee.com, under coffee.com/lazydevs, on Patreon/lazydevsacademy, and you can also support me here on YouTube just by using YouTube memberships. No matter what you do, you get the same treatment, and thank you so much for all of your support, guys. Really means a lot to me. And now I know a lot of people are very excited about me continuing the Zelda tutorial. I want to be working on this, but until then, if you can't wait that long, I want to point out that this month I've been streaming a lot of Picotron development work where I recreated Final Fantasy, the old NES Final Fantasies, a little bit in Picotron. If you want to see how that went and what I learned from that, you can check out the Twitch channel, or I have a dedicated Lazy Devs Live YouTube account that you can check out as well. I don't know if this will get turned into a tutorial in the future. If that's something that you're interested in, let me know. I might do that in the future as well. But otherwise, I have Zelda in my sights for sure. That was it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time around, guys. Bye bye.